Amantya Podcast Series. Today, we will dive into the world of software testing and explore a game changer in the testing landscape, the test automation frameworks. To tell us more about this groundbreaking innovation and help us understand how this has revolutionized software testing, allowing for faster and more efficient validation of applications, we have with us today Amantya's AVP Engineering, Gaurav Sharma. Welcome, Gaurav.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful to have you here with us.
Good to be on the show.
So, getting started, and diving into the questions that we have for you today, we are very excited to know about Amantya's recent launch, the test automation framework. Please tell us a little bit about the solution and how it differs from traditional frameworks.
Sure. So I'll give you some background to this test automation framework and the reasons behind why we developed it in the first place. Uh, why do we think that it is such a interesting concept for a lot of organizations, not only us, but a lot of organizations out there that are working on developing 5G uh, devices, G-Node Bs, etc., and so on. Right. To begin with, we actually started this particular building this product for our internal use, but then eventually along the way, what we discovered and what we realized was that the implications or the use cases for this particular product, they are many, and probably this is something that a lot of organizations, companies out there, they are looking for, right? So if you look at the 5G space out there, a lot of organizations or companies that are working on the radio side, right, so building G-Node Bs or the RAN part, they need a framework or they need tools to actually test their equipment with, say, real devices, modems, UEs, etc., and so on. Right. So what then we did was at the end of the day, to test, say, a G-Node V or a RAN, what you need is a standard uh, modem 5G or a 5G UE. And if there is a way to actually control this particular modem, the interactions that it does with the G-Node V, uh, and if we can actually control this whole interaction, observe it, get logs, write test cases, automate things, then we would be having a tool, an automated tool that would actually help the testers a lot, right? So that was the whole idea behind this thing. So now the shape that this particular product has taken is quite actually easy. We have a rack of UEs or modems or devices, 5G devices. There is a test manager that runs on top of it. Through this test manager, you actually control all these devices. When I say control all these devices, what I mean is the kind of operations that these devices would be performing, right? So this may be related to registrations, PDU sessions, establishment, uh, querying network for certain things, right? Running certain RRC procedures, right? And since the fact that this is actually using the real 5G air interface, the testing that you do here, that actually reflects a lot of field conditions that one would encounter. So from that perspective, it gives testers an ideal environment, and which is relatively low cost to actually test their, say, RAN or 5G core product. So that was the whole idea behind.
So, Gaurav, you mentioned 5G, but is this only a 5G specific, or are we talking about a solution which caters to all technologies?
Okay, so the framework is pretty agnostic in that sense, right? So the same framework, and we've done that as well. This can be used to test 4G networks as well, right? The test framework, the test manager, if I may say so, the APIs that we've utilized, they are pretty much standard across these different modems, right? So HC or 3GPP actually specifies these APIs, right? So we've utilized them. So this can be used to test other networks as well. One of the key things that I would like to highlight was that earlier a lot of organizations struggled when they moved their products from labs to the actual environment. Right? In labs, they were testing with G-Node simulations or UE simulations, right? They did not actually get the opportunity to test their products using real interfaces, 4G, 5G, or with this particular product, you have the ability to actually test real life network interfaces, air interfaces, and see how your G-Node B or RAM behaves. Right now, the same thing. This is extensible. So if I swap the system under test to the UE, so if you know that your G-Node B and 5G code, this is standard, well tested, right? You can also use this particular framework to actually test your devices as well, right? So that's the other way to look at this particular product.
And who stands to benefit the most, as are the primary key stakeholders, the kind of industries it will impact the most, the use cases it will help unlock?
Sure. So anybody who is developing things on which include 5G air interface or radio interface. So this can be people who are involved in the development of G node Bs or 4G E node Bs. Right. That's one category. Certain set of companies that are developing sensors. Right. You can go ahead and utilize this particular product to actually automate their testing.
Okay. So Gaurav, you've already told us a few features which make it stand apart. But if we were to sort of sum them up, what are the standout features which give this particular solution an edge?
Sure. Sure. So when we talk about any automation framework, right, there are in principle 4 or 5 different blocks of any test automation framework. Right? The first block is the ability to write test cases, right? So what this framework provides is the ability. So there's a beautiful laid out UI. The tester can go ahead. He can define test cases, right? And when I say define test cases, what I am referring to are the are things like, okay, now you do a registration. Now you set up a PDU session of this particular type. Now you do this. So the tester can go ahead and write down a complex scenario. Right. That's the first block. The second block is the execution of these test cases. Right. And plus the ability to schedule them at some particular interval and group test cases together. Right. Because at the end of the day, say if I need to come up with the concept of a test suite, right, which means that there are 5 or 10 different test cases I want to run, right, and see the results, right. So this particular framework, this gives the ability to actually club tests together and then schedule the running or the execution of these this particular test suite. That's in principle the second block, right. The third critical block is the ability to generate reports, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't get a report from the automation framework, I don't think it makes any sense, right? So we have a reporting mechanism, which is again very intuitive, very easy, gives a lot of information. How many test cases executed, what were the results, what were the traces, etc., etc. The fourth block, and again, which is something which is I would say a USP for this particular thing, and since we've used it for our development, we have kind of developed it in that sense that it would be useful for a lot of people, right? That is the tracing and debugging capabilities of this particular thing, right? So say at the end of the day, I ran say 5 test cases, and say test case 4th failed, right? Now, what this tool gives to me is the ability to actually get the logs or get important diagnostic information from the UE plus the G-node as well, right? So at that particular instant, now I know that what happened exactly, right? From a protocol perspective, from an exact message sequence perspective, the various information elements that were exchanged on the radio interface, what were the different power characteristics, etc., that actually may have led to this particular test case failing, right? So the ability to actually extract that information, that's a very critical or a very helpful.
To refine it, or
Yes.
to make those changes.
Right. So that's a very critical and important thing. Now, what we've done is we've gone ahead, and some of this information is quite proprietary in that sense that you need more complicated tools to actually analyze this thing, and you need sufficient protocol knowledge to actually interpret these logs, right? Now, here what we've done is that we have written another intelligent layer on top of this that actually looks at these particular logs, analyzes these logs, and on the basis of the information that it has gathered, it can point out certain anomalies within the whole message flow. It can, in fact, send a lot of these traces in PCAP formats as well, so that developers, testers, they can independently view these logs as well, right?
And these days we see a lot of simulators being used, but this solution, I believe, uses real modems, real UEs. How does that make a difference?
Right. And that's the USP of this whole thing. Simulators, I mean, they can take you to one particular state or one particular level point, but then after that, you would need to actually test with real equipment, right? Simulators will not take into account a lot of things happening on the real air interface, right? With real UEs, with real modems, with real G-Node Vs, right? You can actually get a feel of what would be happening when these devices roll out into the market, right? So from that perspective, a lot of scenarios that a developer or tester may have missed, right? Because at the end of the day, simulation is something that is done within a very controlled, limited environment, right? The number of variables or the number of factors influencing the protocol flow, they are very well controlled, right? But with this particular product, I mean, you are testing with your standard 5G air interface or 4G air interface, right? So you get that spectrum or that full uh, width of different scenarios, right? That you need to test your product.
Okay, that's very interesting. So Gaurav, how does you've obviously told us very in detail how it simplifies the entire testing process. So how would an organization integrate it with its existing testing framework?
Sure, yeah, that's a very interesting and a very important question, right? Because at the end of the day, even what we have done today, right, is that okay. So there are two things to it. One is this whole framework. This provides a RESTful interface that you can use to actually integrate this particular framework with your existing tools, right? So say if today you have already have a test framework or something on those lines, right? That gives you the ability to make certain API calls, that gives you the ability to make certain RESTful calls, right? There's an interface that this tool already provides, right? So wherein you can actually provision various scenarios, you can execute various scenarios, you can get results, etc., etc. So that's point number one. The point number two is the integration of this particular tool with your CI/CD pipelines, right? Because at the end of the day, most of the companies these days, I mean, it's such a standard thing. They have their own CI/CD pipelines, right? So every night or at any predefined triggers, you would be executing these pipelines. There would be various phases. One phase is related to the automated testing, right? So you can actually plug in this particular framework into your CI/CD pipeline as well, right? So
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for taking the time to talk to us about this fascinating game changer in the testing landscape. And we look forward to more such innovations from Amantya. Thank you so much.
It was so good to be on the show.
We shall be back soon with another interesting topic in discussion. Until then, this is Rohina signing off. Goodbye.